this came out a little while ago. This is the game right now that I am the most excited for. Path of Exile 2. It is coming out in 2 days, if you don't count today. I am so excited to play this game, man. Like, I am ready. Oh my god, it's gonna be so good. Oh, all right. PoE 2 will be a bomb. I'm ready to just play, man. I just want to play the game and have fun. That's it. All right, here we go. Let's watch. This is an interview that was done a little while ago. Here we go.
Path of Exile 2 has everybody hyped, myself included, for the December 6th release of the beta. Now, I've been very fortunate in that I've gotten a few opportunities to play it over the last year. I've played the Witch, I've played the Ranger, I have played the Mercenary, I've played the Monk. I can't wait to dive in and play the beta. That said, at all of the preview opportunities, I had the chance...
I still don't know what class I'm going to play. I think I'm going to play Warrior, right? Whatever Warrior is. And, like, try to make a wall build. But I'm not even sure. Like, what I'm going to do... So, there are two... It's between two things. It's minions or the wall. I think I'm going to build the wall first. And then do minions after. I don't know.
To sit down with Jonathan Rogers, the game director,
I could let you guys
ask
choose
him a few questions. Now, I've never released these interviews before, but I thought I would do so right now to get some thoughts from him.
Yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll let you guys choose
about the games industry and what he thinks.
What are you doing over there that's keeping people into Path for over 10 years and excited about Path 2? What do you focus on to keep that going?
I really think that it's being unafraid of innovation. I think a lot of game companies, and especially as they get larger, they start to get very sort of dried in the wool, and it even...
This is very true. Like, PoE's taken a lot of big risks with their different leagues. You know, like Sanctum, Lake of Calandra, fucking, like, that weird, like, auto battler thing that they did. I forgot even what the name was for. It was the Chieftain thing. Yeah. Blight, yep.
Happens within the studio.
Toa, yeah, there you go.
Quite frequently, I propose a change, and I get a lot of pushback from people because this is the way we've always done it, you know, that kind of thing. And just even from that, like, I don't think it's even necessarily, like, you know, because people talk all the time about how, oh, you know, budgets get large and people get risk averse. I don't even think that's necessarily even the largest pressure. I think that what it is that even internal to the studio, you know, a lot of people get used to how things are. They want things to stay the same. Like, many people who work for a game company are fans of the game. And so you get that same pressure of like,
this is a huge problem that WoW had for years. This is actually a huge, very, very good point. This is a massive problem that WoW had.
We can't change our flasks work. We can't change this. We can't change that. You know what I mean? And so we just have to really try to push through that. And so a lot of the time in the studio, what I'm doing...
It's like things that have been in the game for so long and people are just like, well, why is it like this? Well, it's like this because it's been like this. Oh, wow. That's the why didn't you tell me?
Saying to people, you know what, like, even if you don't like this, we're going to try it, and if it's bad, then it's bad, and we'll just do something else. But if, you know, it's worth trying to do different things. And I think that served us well. And every time we've taken risks, it's paid off, right? And every time that we've been risk averse, I think it hasn't gone as well for us.
Yeah, he's right.
Why do you sort of stand out right now in the industry? I think about how you handled a recent difficult decision, I have to imagine, to delay the beta from November to December. Well, let me rephrase the question.
I feel like it's not a difficult decision at all to delay, because they've built up... The reason why it's okay for them to delay is the same reason why it's okay for From Software to delay. It's because they've built up community goodwill, and when a mistake happens, people understand it, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, of course, right? That's the reason. I'd rather delays than early slop. Yeah, exactly. And it's because people have an expectation, and also there's a pattern of quality. So when this game gets delayed, when old WoW expansions, you know, it will be ready when it's ready, the Blizzard soon. It was a meme, but the reason why it was a meme is because people knew that when it came out, it was going to be really good. That's the difference.
How did you decide to handle the delay in that manner?
Well, First of all, delaying a game is very, very difficult because there are so many people who want to tell you that it can't be done.
Yeah,
and the reason they want to say that is because they're like, oh, you know, we're going to have to lose this deposit on this marketing thing, and we're going to have these server costs, and we're going to have this and that, right? So it ends up costing a lot of money. So it's a very difficult decision to make. And plus, there's also just disappointing the players, and everyone's afraid of that, and that's really hard. But at the same time, we just kind of got to the point where it was untenable not to delay because the risks were starting to get too high. But I think the really most important thing is just being honest with people, not appearing, you know, like, for lack of a better word, like a corporate drone, right? Like, you want to actually just be honest and tell people exactly, you know, why did we come to this decision, what actually happened there. And
I think that's another really big component, what he's talking about, is being honest with the audience and respecting the intelligence of the audience. The reason why you had to delay is because it wasn't ready yet. And there's some things that weren't finished. Okay, that's fine. You know, treat people like adults, they'll act like adults. Treat them like children, they'll act like children too. It's that simple.
I think that, you know, like every time we've ever been honest with the players, I think that that's been something that's been really good. So
exactly.
That's where it comes from, really.
Totally true.
Like, we just told people exactly why it was. We didn't kind of mince words or kind of, you know, like trying to be vague. Like, you know, here is the exact thing that caused us to delay the game. We'll tell the players that, and they'll hopefully be understanding of that.
Yeah, totally get it. And I think it's received really well. I watched a different announcement from a different company, and it was all over the place. And then I watched yours.
Talking about Diablo 4. Oh, man. You gotta really do that?
Succinct, you take responsibility, you apologize, and then you put it out there. And I, as a player, really appreciated that because I am looking forward to the November date.
Or Ubisoft, yeah, true.
What's the biggest issue facing the overall industry right now, in your opinion?
Oh, this is a good interview.
It's a tricky one. I mean, it's interesting because I think AAA gaming is in kind of in a weird place right now. Like, we're kind of in this weird, like maybe this is not the right, sort of AA territory where it's like we're in this kind of position where, like, we're not like one of the giant mega studios, so that we kind of haven't inflated to the point where it becomes difficult to even make anything. But we're also definitely not in the classification of what you would call an indie game either. So I think that's kind of interesting because there's just not a lot of huge things in that area. And really, I mean, that stuff we talked about the ossification of game development, like in AAA, it's just really, really bad at this point, right? Like, there's definitely very little risk taking. There's kind of not a lot of that going on. But at the same time, you know, there aren't a lot of those kind of indies coming up and sort of entering the big leagues either. And so it's just something that's kind of been a trend for quite a while.
I feel like it does happen. Like, I feel like it's definitely very rare, but like every year we have examples of it happening.
Wow, you've
like
kind of got the
Balatro
small games
or whatever.
And you've got the big games. There's very little in the middle. So I think Path of Exile really is kind of in that sort of space, that one of the few games that kind of is in that type of area.
Like right in the middle.
Yeah, exactly, right? You know, so we get to have like kind of nice graphics and a nice budget and all that sort of stuff, but we also get to still be innovative and like do interesting things that other companies aren't doing.
That's, I think, where and the thing is that a lot of AA studios, like what Grinding Gear Games kind of is, the space that they're operating in right now was the space that AAA developers operated in 10 to 15 years ago, whenever they were more dominant. But they've just kind of grown more and more, and now it's like, again, they're being crushed under their own weight, right? Like, you look at, like, Larian, and like, I think Grinding Gear Games, let me think if there's a third one. The people that make Warframe, I forgot the name of them, but yeah, basically the same thing.
So I really don't know how to sort of reclaim that middle again and sort of have the game industry have that kind of stuff again. And I think that really is challenging for the industry. Like, it used to be that there were a lot of what you might call AA games, and I kind of don't know where it all went. Like, why do we now in this position where you've got the like ultra AAA stuff, which is kind of very stolid and kind of not really going anywhere, and then on the other end of the side of things, you've got like the indies where, you know, it can be hard to get the broader audiences. And you know, like, I just don't know how you get that middle back.
Do you feel like there's been an over-priority?
I feel like we're getting the middle back. Like, it's a, I think that it's something that's happening over time from just consumer trends. Like the success of something like Baldur's Gate 3, Path of Exile 2, Helldivers 2. We're seeing this happen as a natural outcome of just people wanting different things. We will go back? Yeah, I think we will. Middle-income gamers are gone.
Put on graphics?
Well, you know, that's an interesting one. I think graphics are important. They actually set, like, there is definitely evidence that people appreciate a game more when graphics are a thing, but at the same time, Like, you can do that stuff more efficiently if you're clever. And I understand it sort of may look like, you know, the part of the reason why AAA budgets have inflated so much is because, you know, of what they're doing with graphics. But at the same time, I do think that a lot of what they're doing, like you can do good-looking graphics by taking advantage of modern hardware without tying yourself into a process that leads to like a very expensive development process that I think some studios have. Like, we're able to produce a game with 100 bosses and like 800 monsters without having to, you know, fall into the trap of having to have a team that's like absolutely thousands and thousands in size. Like, it can be done.
I feel like that's also a big component. It's that maybe things cost a lot of money for the AAA studios because they're inefficient. Like, we always talk about, like, oh, yeah, it costs this much money. But, like, for other people, it doesn't. So, like, when you are able, like, maybe it's the way that you have your system set up. Imagine that. Yeah, government. Exactly. It's bloat. Yeah.
It's just a question of, you know, correct prioritization and the way that you do it. So I think it can be done. And as I said, players do value graphics. Like, it's important. Like, when people are looking at impressive boss fights, part of what they're looking at is the good animation and all the sort of work that we put into that. It's part of the spectacle and the charm.
Absolutely.
So, you know, like, a lot of people do say graphics aren't important. I actually don't agree. I think they are important. But then it's the same time, you have to be very careful.
I think graphics are very important, but graphical fidelity isn't. So, for example, like, the style of a game like Mouthwashing or Vampire Survivors is appealing, or like Pow World, that's like much more low-res graphics, and just having Unreal 5 doesn't guarantee your game to be successful. But it's definitely about style and like art direction more than fidelity. And I think the problem is that a lot of studios nowadays, they don't have that good eye for design that, for example, like, think about how much of a role lighting plays. Like, lighting in Dark Souls is what makes the game, I think, look beautiful. Like, if you just took, if you had really bad lighting in that game, the game would look terrible.
Careful not to waste time doing things, you know, like sanding under the drawers is what they would, Pixar, I think, used to say.
Yeah.
You know, when you don't need to be doing that, you know, when you can be concentrating on stuff that's actually, you know, put the budget on the screen, as it were, as opposed to wasting a lot of time with things that people just don't really notice.
Right.
Do you think Path of Exile 2 is going to be able to dethrone Banana Game on Steam charts?
Oh, maybe for a day. Maybe for a day, but that Banana Game is no joke. I think that you're going to see PoE 2 for this launch. I think you're going to see a player base size of 600 to 900,000 players. I think it's going to be somewhere around there. But here's also the big issue. I don't even play it on Steam. I played it through the launcher forever. So, yeah, I feel like it probably will have more people. 600K on Twitch. Look at Team's top sellers now. Yeah.
That's a tricky question. I think that when we go into full release, I think that there's a very good chance that we could end up topping the charts. But, you know,
I think they
for
will.
early access, I'm not so sure. I guess we're going to see. I really have no idea what kind of concurrency we're going to get for early access. Like, on the one hand, you know, like, it is a big... I think it's going to be a big, you know, tentpole release. On the other hand, you know, it is early access, right? Like, a lot of people might be afraid to jump in for that reason. But I guess the message to those people would be that...
It doesn't matter. People will play it. If the game is good, they'll play it early. Like, PUBG was early access. It had 3 million concurrent players. Yeah, no, doesn't matter.
You know, we are a game that has the content of what a full AAA game would have these days. And
well, it's not
we're
true,
also
it's more.
A much lower price point than what those games would be.
Yes, $30.
So even though, you know, it's early access, I think that the value proposition is incredibly there. And I think we should be able to see some pretty big numbers on launch of early access as well.
I think so,
but,
too.
Certainly when we get to full release, I'm sure we're going to be topping the charts. I see no reason why we wouldn't be.
Confident, huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
Well, we're certainly going to buy enough servers for that.
Oh.
Right. When you're making a game, what's the most important consideration a developer needs to have when crafting the experience? What needs to be top of the priority
Player
list?
experience?
It's honestly a very difficult question because of the fact that a good game, is the culmination of getting every little tiny detail right. And it really is that defeat in detail, I think, that makes games feel bad. And the amount of effort, it honestly takes a lot of experience to get to the point where people even know what good looks like. I think that, once again, a lot of AAA games these days are getting defeated in detail.
A game, yeah, he's totally right about this. And a game that defeated me in details is Throne and Liberty. Just like the way that you moved and the way that it played, I didn't like it. And so I quit playing. Straight up. Not for me.
Right, like it's all of the little things that add together to an experience that that isn't good, rather than it being just like one big issue. And I guess a lot of people, when they're analyzing games and why they're not doing well, they want to focus on, oh, it's because of this thing, and this big issue, it's because of that big issue. But I really think the gameplay comes down to getting 1,000 small details right, and if you do that, then the experience will be good. And it's honestly,
that's the thing that a lot of developers don't do, is they don't look at the minute-to-minute gameplay and ask themselves, is this fun? They can look at maybe the big picture systems, but the big picture doesn't matter if your minute-to-minute gameplay isn't fun.
I think even we underestimated what it would take to ship Path of Exile 2, because like just getting all those details right and getting all those things, like it was very easy to be overconfident, especially at first when we were marketing the game. Because making a fresh game means getting all those details right again.
Yeah.
And getting all the, like, we were really overconfident about itemization. Like, it took a lot of iteration to get to the point where that was working. Like, we thought, oh yeah, we'll just take PoE 1, make a few changes, and then we're good. No, like, it required like a huge amount of extra work. Like all of those things. And like, you get one thing wrong, and immediately someone will have a bad experience, and they'll say that your game is bad. So it really is all those details that are required to get it done. So yeah, I honestly couldn't point to one thing. It's just like 1,000 things, but correct, and knowing what those are.
Yeah, I remember the old philosophy. I think it was Bungie who said...
I think it's game feel. Like, for me, it's game feel. That's the most important thing that I've always felt like for games matters the most. Does it feel good to move around and play the game? And if the game fails at that, I'm done. I'm done. I don't want to play a game like that. And I think that PoE, especially, like, I mean, you guys know, like, if you get, like, Tailwind buff, holy fuck, it plays so well. It plays extremely well.
At like the 3 seconds of fun or something like that?
Sure.
Is that still one of the main things that you
I mean, sure, it's absolutely relevant, right? Like, you need to make sure that at every moment you are enjoying the experience that you're having. And, and as I said, any one thing can destroy that. So you need to be very careful.
Yeah, it's like Throne Liberty again for me. There were a lot of things about the game that would mean that, like, I would love this game, but the way that I moved and the way that the combat wasn't fun. That's it. I'm out. Yeah, I don't want to play it.
Okay, cool.
I mean, in some ways you could say that game development is more about not getting things wrong than it is about getting things right. Like, if you can polish absolutely every little problem that a player might have out of the experience, you can give them a good time, even though, like obviously you need innovation as well, but like it really is important just to not get any of that stuff wrong.
Look at Power World. Power World didn't do shit. They stole everything. Everything was fucking stolen. It didn't matter because it played well. People played it. That's it.
What makes you so confident that Path of Exile 2 has all those right things?
I guess we've done a lot of testing recently, and it was something that took us a while to get to and do all that stuff. But effectively, we've beta tested a lot. We've done a lot of these events like that. We've got a lot of feedback. It's helped a lot to get a lot more confidence. And I guess one of the things that also was a bit concerning when we first were doing all that testing is that we were finding that Path of Exile 1 players were liking the game as much as new players were. So by having, by
I bet that's
more,
probably why they made 2 versions of the game, or they transitioned to that.
making it so those numbers became similar, it makes me actually a lot more confident, because I know that someone who knows Path of Exile, who knows how all the mechanics should work, is liking the game. And I also know that a new player who takes it on face value is who also doesn't have any experience with, who doesn't appreciate the game on the level of just like knowing about all the stats and everything, can also enjoy the game as well. And that makes me feel we've got both the kind of immediate, the few seconds of playing is just enjoyable, sort of going well, and we've also got the kind of longer term, I'm caring about stats and how to build my character stuff right as well.
This is something that like Elden Ring does very well, is they make the game easy to play for casuals, but also if you want to play it super hardcore, you can do that too. Absolutely. They don't want to take the risk and lose their old players. Well, I think that with PoE 1, there are going to be people that always are going to like PoE 1 more, because you can just like run through a map super fast with like the amount of like complexities and buffs and, like things like that. But I do think that obviously PoE 2 will have probably more lasting power, because like that gameplay is kind of one-dimensional.
If we can get both of those things right, then I think we'll have a
very
good game
one-dimensional.
Yeah, I mean, I already told you during Summer Games Fest that I was really enjoying it. So best of luck as we go towards December. I'm very excited.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You know, Path 2 is coming out. What are some of the pitfalls that you want to avoid with Path of Exile 2? And at the same time, what were some of your must-haves when developing a sequel to an already hit game?
Yeah, so I mean, the tricky part is that when you make a game, a sequel to a very popular game that has a very hardcore community, every single thing you change about it is like a potential point of friction for a community that's going to be like can be incredibly. I mean, look, they've got a lot of opinions, right? And so the pitfall that I worry about is, like on day one, you get a bunch of like even though. Like new players may play it and enjoy it. You might have a situation where like PoE1 players are kind of like, I don't like this. It doesn't fit to whatever I want. And so that is a really big problem. And we were actually very concerned about this because when we first did our user testing closed betas, we actually found that Path of Exile 1 players rated the game worse than what Path of Exile 2 players, what new players did. And that was a huge concern, right? Because it's like, we can't really launch like this. This would be a big issue. And so it took us a while to kind of get the game to a point where both PoE1 and new players both liked it. But yeah, we started from a point where new players liked it more than old players. And in fact, it was very interesting because Path of Exile 1 players actually rated the difficulty of the game harder than what new players did. New players rated the game
because you had to, because you had to do things like nowadays. Like I watch people play PoE. They don't even know what the fuck's happening. Like, they just go in and clear everything. Everything's dead instantly, right? And so it's like there's not really a lot of thinking. Yeah, there's like autoplay builds. Basically, just walk,
it's actually not that difficult. And PoE1 players are like, man, this game is so impossible. And it's just because they're trying to apply all the knowledge that they had from playing a game for 10 years to a game that has different mechanics and different stuff going on. So as I said, I think that's the biggest pitfall and the biggest potential source of strife we might get at launch is just, a bunch of PoE1 players having issues. But as I said, I think we've managed to solve it.
This is what happened with Sekiro as well. Like basically in Sekiro, like when it came out, a lot of people that were like Dark Souls fans were like unhappy initially, because the game didn't play like Dark Souls. Like, you couldn't just dodge and hit, right?
Problems. There was just a lot of things around itemization and like the way the tree was, and just a lot of things like that we had to deal with. And so in terms of stuff that I think that was just really important to get going from the start, I mean, this endgame stuff, I think that was something that we realized relatively late, that we really have to make sure that, like, if we don't have a good endgame going into early access, then Path of Exile 1 players are just going to say, hey, this is just a worse game. Like, we need that stuff to be...
The endgame is what really sells PoE. Because, like, the people that stick around and play, that's what they really go through. And I feel like that's the most rewarding thing about PoE, is the fact that the end game for the experience is not just beating the same boss, but there's a bigger number for the boss. That's what I think a huge issue is.
Able to actually make a PoE1 player feel like, oh yeah, you know what, this is a true sequel to PoE1, because for a lot of players in PoE1, the campaign is not even a thing for them anymore. They complete it in hours because they've done it so many times. Like for them, it's like just a tiny blip in the progress of a character, right? Because like they spend 99% of their time in in-game. So if we didn't have that, then I think it would have been a disaster.
This is one thing that a lot of MMOs really lack too, is that they don't have, and this is also like a lot of live service games in general that are progression based, they don't have an end game that feels fulfilling. And then you have the hardcore players that play the game and they're looking for more content, and then they just run out of things to do and they quit playing the game. Like Diablo 4 is probably the best example of that, where you've pretty much experienced all of the content in the game after 2 days of playing the game. All you're doing after that is doing the same content with a bigger number. And I don't really think that's very exciting. I don't think that's exciting at all. I think it kind of sucks. So yeah, our New World. Oh, New World is also another really great example. Like, New World on release had no end game at all. And so people would get to 60, like a lot of people would play New World. They're like, oh, this is really fun. But like, also like in New World ran into problems at like level 30 to 40, right? Because you just kept doing the same thing over and over. So the reason why PoE is a good game, or something like Elden Ring is a good game, or Baldur's Gate 3, or Metaphor, or like any of the other like good games, it's because you have a measured experience the entire way through, and it's not just you doing the same thing but with a bigger number. I think that's the way that a lot of difficulty is designed in games now, and it's super fucking boring.
Thankfully, now that we've addressed that concern, we've got stuff, we believe we have enough of it in-game
to
make those people happy. I think that pitfall will thankfully be avoided. But as I said, it was only a thing that we realized relatively recently.
What was the hardest thing to get with couch co-op? Because that's not something a lot of games do these days.
For sure. So, I mean, there's a few things. One of them is that, and this is probably the most obvious one to people, is that having to just build the UI again. So we have to make 3 versions of the UI now. We've got the PC version, we've got the console version, then we've got the couch co-op version. But it ended up being really important because we found that it really just sucks to have to wait for the other player to do things. Like when we first did it, it was just, you could open a full screen menu and the other person just had to wait, basically. And so then we were like, okay, well, this isn't really good enough. Let's add at least inventory. We'll make it so that part will work. And as soon as we had that, we're like, oh, but people want to be able to allocate passives separately. People want to be able to do this and that. And pretty soon we were rebuilding every single UI screen. And we haven't even finished that yet. Like right now, if you've got 2 players, you can't both shop at the same time. But we're still getting complaints about that. So now we're like, okay, now we have to remake the shop interface as well on couch co-op. And we're pretty much ending up, as I said, rebuilding everything 3 times now. So that's certainly certainly something. But I think it is worth it because people are so excited for couch co-op. Like even just around the office. Like once our developers knew we were making
that's the one place where PoE can get new players. I think PoE definitely has the hardcore ARPG Andy locked down, but what they don't have locked down is the casual dad that heard about Diablo 4 because it came on a commercial in between the football game. And so having couch co-op so people can play this game and it's more accessible is massive.
Everyone was like, oh man, I really want to play this with my partner. Like, it was just a really exciting thing. And people have responded really well to it. Like, ever since the announcement, people have just been really buzzing about it. So, I think it's worth it.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's just a feature you don't see a lot these days.
For sure.
So the fact that it's being included, it kind of just reminds you that you're putting a lot of care into Path 2. Path 2 is going to have PvP, right?
It will, but it's not really the focus, to be honest. So every
Thank God. Thank God. Just say that. I love that. I think WoW makes such a huge mistake by trying to make PvP the focus. If you want isometric PvP, play League. Stop trying to put PvP in every game. It doesn't fit. Yeah, play Dota.
Time we ever tried to make PvP like a big focus thing, people have kind of found like they enjoy PvE better. So like we'll have PvP still.
Any Hall of the Grandmasters enjoyers? Remember how fucking annoying that was when it was required for the Atlas? Everybody hated that so much.
God! It's more of a kind of fun thing you might want to do with your friends rather than some big serious competitive thing. Like we're not an esport. That is not our intention. So that's kind of.
Do you have any concerns about balancing going in?
For PvP?
For PvE?
Oh, for PvE? Absolutely.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
It's
going to be broken.
Exile is an atrocious game to balance. It's especially hard now because the amount of cross-class synergy that can happen, because we're doing a lot more of this sort of combo type gameplay. Yeah. And when we do that, we try to keyword things so that they would work across classes. Yeah. So, for example, you've got something like a power charge, which is something that you can use to improve your abilities. And we try to have power charge mechanics on quite a lot of different classes. And what that means is that we've got to be very careful about what skills, because you can use skills from other classes. You've got to be very careful about how those things can happen, because when you're balancing something, when you're looking at it, you may just be only thinking, okay, what can this do with the skills that I've got in this class? But given that you can use things from any class, we also have to be worried about all this other stuff, and it can kind of the explosion of different possibilities kind of gets out of control. And
I think that's definitely true, but that's the fun of PoE, is being able to find a build that's like insanely broken. Like that one, there's like that AFK ultimatum build that used, I think it was called Blood Notch, the gem. That was so fucking insane. That was nuts.
I mean, I know already that there's just like ultra broken stuff that you could do. Like if you use that bell with a Sork using Spark, it is broken as hell. Like you can just chew through any boss right now. So we need to do something about that. But that kind of thing is
maybe we'll play
tough
Witch
to deal with.
Yeah.
But we kind of like that stuff.
Yeah, I think maybe we should play
that's
Witch.
What makes it interesting in the long term, right?
What's your philosophy in that?
Noted.
I've heard it referred to as like nails on a board. You see one pop up a little too high. Do you want to? Do you like just let it linger for a while before you tap it down where it needs to be?
So generally speaking, we don't do nerfs
league
within a
adjustments.
league.
Yeah.
Like whatever the balance is when a season starts, we want to keep that so that people don't feel like they invest time into their character and then for the developer to just come along and destroy what they were doing. So I always try to avoid that. But each season, it is okay to be able to do some balance stuff. I don't want to just like whenever we're doing stuff like that, I try to find something that isn't what the players expect as for how we're going to change something. Like, I don't want to just, like, nerf the damage value, right? I mean, sure, you can do that, but it's cool, I think, to kind of come up with something else to kind of subvert something that's going on and sort of make it more interesting.
Like, example of this is, like, when they capped Detonate Dead. Like, people had a cast-on-crit version of Detonate Dead that would just create infinite balls and kill anything instantly, and then they capped Detonate Dead at 50 corpses at a time.
I guess the funny
and
part
that's
about,
like, yeah, the balls, exactly. Oh, sorry, Volatile Dead. I apologize. Yes, it was Volatile Dead, not Detonate Dead.
That isn't, and I think the reason why a lot of developers just kind of turn into nerf fests with their patches is because it's way easier to see the thing that's broken and nerf it than it is to see the thing that's underpowered and buff it.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, you don't really, you know, like inherently the things that are not as powerful get less attention because players aren't playing with them.
Yeah, of course.
They're not on your mind. And so, yeah, the ability to sort of notice that stuff and buff it is actually quite hard to sort of get into the mindset of doing.
Yeah.
But this is what you should be doing.
Yeah, you know, and there's this sort of dance with players where you want them to feel that power fantasy
For sure.
of leveling.
For sure.
But then you also got to keep it fresh, like with each season of
sure.
the game. How do you approach that? Like, are you like, okay, this time we're going to
I think the reason why it stays fresh with PoE is the fact that there are so many options. In Diablo, I feel like if I'm going to play a warrior in Diablo, there's like 3 things that I can do. But in PoE, there's like 300 things that I can do. And the way that you play, let's say, a Cyclone Slayer is a lot different than the way that you play a, Necromancer, for example. And I think that's really what the big difference is. It's the different play styles and the way that the different play styles play into the way that you interact with the league.
go all in on druids, and then next season it'll be witch.
It does kind of end up going like that. Like with each Path of Exile season, we definitely pick a few things to address.
Yeah.
But you've always got to make sure that there's a stuff around the whole game. And so ideally, with the way we do game design, whenever we add something new to the system, because everything has so much cross-pollination, it means that it generally will affect the builds of kind of all different classes. Like when we add a league and so on.
You can see like the inverse of this is whenever they added in the what do you call it? The Arc Nemesis mobs, or like whatever the fuck they were, where like they just had like infinite scaling health because of multipliers.
That does keep the gameplay fresh. I think more so than most games, we have this kind of like thing where almost any system can interact with another system, and that is what leads to the complexity that like Path of Exile is kind of a bit notorious for. But it does mean that it does keep the game fresh every time people keep coming back. So ideally, we can kind of tame the complexity while still keeping that element. But it is pretty challenging.
What's something that you're really proud of with Necropolis, and something that you feel like you could have been better? The feedback has been somewhat mixed.
People didn't like this league.
It isn't really my thing. Like I'm not working on Path of Exile 1, so I'm kind of aware of it just from being in the studio. But probably the main issue that we had with Necropolis, I think, was that we had a lot of like brokenness in the economy specifically. Like there were things that certain players were able to do to get like ridiculous amounts of wealth really easily, and that kind of broke the economy a little bit in that league more so than others. The funny thing about it was that at the start, people thought that we'd nerfed everything into the ground to the point there would be no oh, you've nerfed all these things, there's no way to get like good items anymore. And then pretty soon we started getting all of these different economic exploits popping up that led to some pretty crazy stuff. And I think that led to some sort of issues. I mean, that's kind of the main one from my perspective, because it's kind of what we've been dealing with as a studio. There were just a lot of these kinds of exploits early on in the league, more so than usual. And so that's been kind of a bit annoying. And so yeah,
it's true that the economy matters a lot for players, because the economy is a progression system too. Like being able to buy gear, like most people I would assume that play PoE seriously, or even play it semi-seriously, the main way that they interface with gear upgrades is by buying them. So if economy's bad, the game's bad.
Is that we really need to be doing more extreme testing. So like with each mechanic, really thinking like, okay, what is the most broken possible thing you could do with this?
Yeah.
And really concentrating on that because otherwise it can lead to these kinds of problems. And I think our QA just kind of weren't really thinking about it in that way as much. Like they tended to look at things and be like, okay, does this feel balanced in the context of like the other stuff you're using it with, without really thinking as much about like what is the worst possible case for this and really zeroing in on that. So yeah, we had a lot of issues around that, and I think that's part of what sort of happened with Necropolis.
With Path 2, what's like your favorite quality of life thing that you're introducing with like
damage numbers?
Co-op cross progression is huge in my mind.
I want damage numbers.
What's something that you're really happy with?
To me, the best QOL stuff is just the way the new skill gem system works. It's just so much easier.
I think the biggest QOL from like a player perspective is damage numbers and WASD movement. That's insane. Huge, massive fucking improvement. And then also another thing is no piano flasks. Yeah. Like, piano flasking was stupid. It was a stupid design. And it just kind of happened over time.
And also now, I mean, this is just what we're doing at the moment, but like now that we've got the support gem system working
damage numbers with health bar,
so much easier to deal with.
That's what I'm saying.
It makes it way more obvious. We've got, I don't know if the build that you've got has all of the stuff here, but like seeing the changes that happen to your character as you add each thing, like that stuff is really nice. It just makes building so much easier. So I mean, you know, there's like a million things I could say, but like that's kind of what I'm thinking about at the moment is just all that stuff with skills and supports and how much easier that makes the game.
Story-wise for Path 2, have you put more focus into it, knowing that like you're going to have more people playing together?
For sure. I don't know if you noticed the changes that were even made in the build. You probably didn't play quite far enough to really understand that, but we're doing a lot more with that stuff. I think we're doing a lot better job than PoE 1 did, and I do hope that by the time people get through Path of Exile 2, they will at least know what the story was, which was not the case for a lot of Path of Exile 1 players.
People had no idea.
We could definitely do better there. But there's also even other things like we've changed the dialogue system quite a bit from how it was in PoE 1. There's still more changes coming even for that.
Like what?
It is something that I want people to be able to consider good in the game.
One thing that I really liked about PoE 1 is that like whenever you're on the shores and you click on the rocks and you click on things like, for example, like the Duresso's Dream, those are just like two examples I can think of off the top of my head, that basically what you do is you click on them and then they'll like play dialogue and you can walk away and you can keep playing the game while the dialogue is playing. And I think that a big issue that a lot of games have with lore is that the lore ends up cannibalizing gameplay.
Which I
think that frustrates players.
I think had pretty good sort of environmental stuff going on, but I wouldn't say that like the overall narrative was like a lot of people skipped it. They weren't really interested, and I think that we can definitely do better there.
What's the greatest lesson you learned from playing other people's games?
I guess it's very different depending on the type of game, but I guess one of the things that I mostly focus on is the fact that like whenever new games come out, you really need to be cognizant of the new minimum bar that they're setting. Like even if you're not necessarily going to, you don't want to copy what they're doing necessarily.
This is what people are complaining about with Baldur's Gate 3. Remember that?
But I think you've got to look at it as like, what is the thing that, what new standard has this game set? You know, we now have to meet this, you know? So like for something like so we've got a dodge roll, obviously, and an animation cancelling. That is not a thing that you could get away without, I think, launching an action RPG today. I think it just wouldn't work. It is set, there is a minimum standard there for that kind of level of controllability.
Exactly. And I think Lost Ark set that standard. After I played Lost Ark with the roll, I was just like, okay, this is better. It's straight up, it's just better. And then Diablo 4 had it, just better experience. It's literally that simple.
You need to meet it, and the same is true of many other systems like trade and the way item system work and a bunch of other things like that. Like you have to make sure you're learning that from other games. So it's just about making sure you're meeting that new minimum, because the minimum is raising all the time, right? With every game that comes out, there's something new that players will expect, and they're right to do so, right?
Just more generally, what's your favorite game of all time and why?
Oh, geez, I mean, that's always a hard one. I mean, if I really had to, if you're putting me on the spot, the first thing that comes to mind is Half-Life. Because, it's the stuff you play when you're a kid, right? It's like, this is the greatest game ever.
I never played Half-Life when I was a kid.
When I was a kid, it was, my favorite games were Final Fantasy VII, and Half-Life and StarCraft, right? Like these
okay, all right.
These are like the three sort of pillars of my of my youth of gaming, right? And so it's very hard to look past that when, you know, nothing else compares to that first experience you have with those kinds of things. Yeah, Half-Life might be one of the more probably slightly up there above the other ones.
How did you never play it?
You might expect me to say Diablo.
Computer wasn't that
which
good?
obviously was a big deal, but you know, like honestly, when I was a kid, it was those other ones.
Yeah, when I was a kid, and I know we're wrapping up here, but I got the Brood War chest, and that was like my first experience of PC gaming. It was great.
Nice.
Okay, just real quick on this last interview. This was one of the earliest interviews I did, and my microphone was not working during it, so I did audio pickups, which may sound a little bit disjointed, but I'm basically repeating what I asked at the time. Here you go. What's the most important thing for an ARPG to get right?
I don't know that I can answer just one thing, because really I'd say there's 5 major things. So the number one to me is action combat, right? Like you can't have like an MMO style combat. It needs to be action focused. Another one is random item generation. The random items are super important. You need to get that right. Very few games actually do. The next one is...
They very rarely do. And this is the big issue that a lot of games have, is that loot is boring. Straight up loot is boring. I feel like that's the reason why Diablo 4 fell off so much when it came out. It's like the damage on Tuesdays meme.
Random levels, ultra important, because if you want a game to last for a long period of time, you have to have level randomization. Once again, something that a lot of modern games aren't really doing these days. Another one is secure online economy. So effectively, you have to have a secure item system. If you don't have the ability to trade items between players, then people just won't value them the same way as if they find them themselves. And then the last one, what is my fifth?
Exactly. That's the reason why I hated Reaper of Souls in Diablo 3. When you couldn't trade items, I thought that was so stupid. Like, why not? Dude's making solid points. Yeah, this guy's... Jonathan, like, really knows his shit. I mean, let's be real. This guy's a boss. Yeah, exactly. I love free trading with no restrictions. I don't want any restrictions on trading. Why would I want a restriction on trading? Just let me... If I want to give something to somebody, just let me do it. Who cares?
What have I forgotten here? Oh yeah, that's right. Character customization. You have to have the ability to have a large amount of character customization, so that if you're playing the game over and over again, you're going to have a lot of different ways to play. It's going to be a different experience every time. So to me, those are the 5. That's how you make an action RPG right there.
Yeah.
We've said this at GDC talks before, and yet still action RPGs come out and they don't have one of those. And I'm kind of like, we're giving you the secret sauce, guys. Like, that's how you do it.
I don't know why that happens. I don't know why people always try to reinvent the wheel, and it's always like just a square. It's like something that's so stupid. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna change everything. Like, stop. No, don't change it. Just add the loot in. I know you think it's a great idea. Stop it. It's not. Super annoying.
So yeah, to me, that's an action RPG right there.
Is it inspiring to see so many successful ARPGs on the market right now?
I think it is good, because a rising tide lifts all boats, and especially with the kind of seasonal model that action RPGs do best with, there's room for people to play more than one action RPG at a time. But the big thing to me that I found is that when new games come out like that, they kind of set a new minimum standard, and we have to make sure we're meeting that standard. Like if they have features that players now expect, that means that we have to make sure we're adapting to what that new minimum is.
That's something that was so good for Final Fantasy XIV getting really popular, is that Final Fantasy XIV made WoW a better game. Because there were a lot of features that a lot of modern MMOs had, but WoW never adopted them because those games never got popular. But as soon as people actually got tired of, like really annoying runbacks or, having to like refarm a bunch of annoying systems, and like having things be I think things being account wide is probably one of the biggest things that WoW adapted to the marketplace with, is that back in the day, everything was character defined. And then I think that because people started playing other games like Lost Ark and Final Fantasy XIV, you saw people going and being like, listen, why? Like, I already did this annoying grind on one character. I don't want to do this on 2 characters. Like, fundamentally, this just isn't fun, right? And I think this is why competition in an industry and in a space is so important, because when you have other people coming up with ideas and you have to meet the standard that they're setting, that's better for the consumer.
So that makes it challenging, right? Like there are things we could have gotten away with before Last Epoch comes out, and then Last Epoch comes out, they have a few things going on that are like have once again raised a minimum standard. We now have to meet that standard as well. We have to care about that. So that kind of thing, it matters a lot, and we, you know, as I said, we have to pay attention.
Can you give me an example?
And it's also like Last Epoch had good ideas. You know, like if you see another game that has a better idea than your game, why would you want to keep the bad idea in your game? That seems crazy. Why would you like, oh, well, yeah, but it's our idea. Yeah, but it's your idea, but it's bad. Why would you do that? Yeah, the loot filter, exactly. Ego. Yeah. Well, that's what ends up getting you to lose. Blizzard loves to do that, though. Yep, they do. They do. And I tried for years to stop that shit, and it would never work. They do it
someone
successfully.
Else is doing that you really like?
Right. So a really good example of this is the trade stuff they have in Last Epoch, where that isn't to say that we want to copy what they're doing with trade, but the key thing is that there was clearly a community demand to make trade easier than what it is in PoE 1.
Exactly.
And when there isn't another game that's
like the trading feature is huge, and you can see how they adapted to that. And this is the difference between good game developers and great game developers. They didn't do what Last Epoch did. They added a marketplace currency system in the Settlers of Calgar League. A lot of times the solution that players have isn't actually the best solution, but the problem that they have is legitimate. And I think that's the difference.
That
Faustus CZ, yep, there you go.
Honestly get away with a worse experience. But when there is, it's like, well, we have to do something about this, right? We have to make sure that we have a trade system that's going to, you know, allow that to, to meet the new minimum standard. Otherwise, people are just going to be complaining about it, and they're right to, right?
Yeah, and they were, because like the trading currency in PoE is terrible. Because like you're either responding, you're spam messaging people that have already sold the product, they're offline, or they're not responding to you, or you're messaging a bot. It's a shit system. I think that like the trading, like the bartering economy of PoE with gear is great, but the currency marketplace is not. And PoE agreed. There it is.
Once other games in the genre have lifted the standard,
easy.
You know, that's on us to improve.
When watching streams, do you ever see things you want to address or fix?
Absolutely. I mean,
this actually is something that I can personally attest to, is that there's been a number of times where GGG has seen my stream or a video that I've made about a topic in PoE, and they've even responded to me about it. Like they are actually watching what people are saying and listening to the feedback.
The only way that we're going to improve is doing that stuff. And it's honestly just watching the people who are playing here, the number of issues they ran into it and being like, oh, God damn it. You know, like we really should have done something about that. It's painful, but you have to do it. Like the user testing, seeing what people actually do is super important.
Does Path of Exile 2 feel vastly different from Path of Exile?
Well, I would definitely say so. To me, just the way combat feels is just vastly different than before. And like that's kind of what I think
that the early game combat is probably going to feel a lot better. And I think that Diablo, like pre-end game gameplay, I actually think Diablo 4 is better than PoE 1. And I think that PoE 1 doesn't overtake Diablo 4 until you get into end game with different types of features and functionalities. In terms of like, this is the way that I feel, right? And the reason why I think it's better is because of the more deliberate, visceral like action in Diablo versus PoE. Whereas PoE, I think like is a little bit more like stunted, and I don't really like it as much. I even felt this way about Diablo 3.
If you go to forums about like when we release a new Path of Exile expansion,
yeah, I think so too.
One of the top comments outside of our community is always, oh, you know, I tried that game, but I just thought it felt really bad or really old or something like that. I just want to make sure that no one ever again says that our combat isn't best in class. Like I want to make sure that is the
Thank you. That is the only fucking thing. Yes, absolutely. Because PoE 2, the combat that I'm seeing, I'm going to be real, guys. I think it looks way better than Diablo 4. Like, it's not even close. It just looks way better.
have that criticism anymore. I just don't want to see it again. And so, you know, that's why I'm really motivated to make sure that we're fixing those problems. And I think we can still even do more than what we've even done now.
Can you tell us more about why you delayed the beta?
Yeah, so ultimately it just comes down to the fact that we didn't appreciate the degree to which really nailing, like the amount of polish you need to do on something.
It wasn't ready. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. Yeah, we weren't ready to do it. Yeah. Got it.
Make it perfect. We're still going to get all the content that we said we were going to, like the content we said we were going to have, like that will be ready. There'll be a whole game there. It's just that like the level of polish. So when we actually went and we're like,
yeah,
okay,
I'll watch that afterwards.
For this demo here, and we're going to get Act 1 and 2 flawless. We're going to get it perfect. The amount of work that took to get it to the point where even we still have bugs now, but I mean, you know, to get to the point where we were like, yeah, we've got something here, just took longer than we expected. Like the level of polish that we, I guess, demand of ourselves at this point is just higher than it is in PoE1. Like a PoE1 boss does not get, I guess, does not need this level of attention. It's just kind of shocking.
So you're saying that the PoE1 bosses, this isn't even my final form? Well, if that's not even your final form, I guess, like, so they're only going to Super Saiyan 1 or 2, whereas in the other hand, Diablo 4 is Mr. Satan. You know, like, that's basically where we're at. I'm just saying. Yamcha, yeah, right? Oh, God.
How much more work it is to get a boss from feeling like, okay, it's got all its skills, to getting to the point where it's like, okay, now it's actually really solid and fun to play. And like, it's just like so many subtle details of how AI works and so on and all this sort of stuff. And then the other side of that is player skills, where once again, getting them to actually feel really, really good is just a longer experience than we thought. And then in addition to that, we have what I was talking about before, which is that when we go and change player skills, sometimes the result of that is like we have to go through every monster and boss again and change the AI and abilities and all that sort of stuff now to take into account for that. So when we added active block, it's like, well, suddenly you need to have a way to know that a skill is going to be not active blockable. So that means we have to think, okay, we have to make, not only do we have to rethink like every skill, like, okay.
Well, they don't really have to think about that. They're just, all they have to do is do the industry standard. Active block that you can't block is red. Okay. There you go. That's the industry standard. Everybody knows that. If it's a red attack, you can't block it.
This fight have enough abilities that you know that the person who's active blocking is able to worry about. Like, is the
they
mix
did
of
that?
correct,
I know
for this character class
because it works.
You know, do we have the indicators that we need? Do we have the wind-ups and all that stuff suddenly comes in? So it's like you change a core feature like that on the player class, and all the content needs to change again. And yeah, that once again that sort of rippled out a huge amount. So I'm hoping there's not going to be too much more of that. I'm hoping we've got to the point now where it's like, you know, we don't suddenly need to feel like we need to change the entire game again just for another character ability. But on the other hand, we just showed you a mount, and I don't know if we've fully explored the results of that one either yet, so we'll see.
I'm sure it'll break some.
Yes, probably.
What do people buy most in the store?
So armor sets are big, you know, like something just to look cool that way. But recently we've been trying a lot more. I mean, stash tabs is a thing, which is one of those things that's kind of on the borderline, but is you know, a reasonable amount. But then the other one, recently we've been doing a lot more things that involve, like, they trigger off gameplay, but they don't actually change the gameplay in any way. So what's a random example of that?
The thing that comes down that slams, it's like the tombstone whenever you kill an elite.
Just a random thing, like, okay, when you do a critical strike, you get like this extra effect. When you kill a rare, you get like a big hand that comes down from the from the heavens and slams down, and this kind of stuff. Like, it's stuff that kind of like interacts with gameplay. And I think that for a long time, our microtransactions were entirely visual, and they didn't really have those interesting kind of interaction with the gameplay, which was a mistake. And the big change we made was we started getting our game designers to make the microtransactions rather than having a separate team to make microtransactions. We're like, no, the microtransactions actually...
Yeah, that makes sense, because I had the Shaper Righteous Fire, and there were a couple of effects that was a pay-to-lose microtransaction. It was. It looked really cool, but that was a pay-to-lose. That was not good. Like, I remember when I played Wardloop, I bought the microtransaction for Freezing Pulse just because it wasn't as bright.
need game designers to work on them. And that made them a significant,
like that, better. Yeah.
So that kind of stuff has helped a lot. And so that sort of broadened quite a bit the horizons.
That's why I see like Pox always using a blue
anything
one.
That's kind of cool that just happens during gameplay, I think that players really like that kind of stuff.
What's your philosophy on microtransactions? Have you seen them handled poorly?
I mean, the main thing really is...
Have you seen that? Yeah, I've seen. Yeah, I'd say so. Actually, yeah, there's a few examples I got.
Said is the pay to win stuff, and like it may seem obvious, but the ultimate downside of anything that you sell is that you are incentivized as a developer to not make that.
Oh my god! This is wow, man. Oh man, I'm so happy. I'm so validated right now. You guys have no idea how validated I am. Yeah. This is special. It is. This is, yeah. There it is. Listen to this, guys.
Good for free.
He's so right about this.
Anything that you sell
he's so right.
Is that you are incentivized as a developer to not make that thing good for free, if you know what I mean. And so you could...
Yep. That's right. Abso-fucking-lutely. Clary watches you. I know that Jonathan's probably seen my stream a few times, but to be honest, this is a common sense reality that any reasonable, intelligent person would have come to. Like, he didn't need to watch my stream. It's common sense. Monetizing something incentivizes you not to have the unmonetized version be worse. Of course. Because you want to upsell people. It's obvious, yeah.
Could argue that by selling cosmetics that we're not incentivized to make our non-cosmetic items look as cool.
I think you guys do that. To be fair, I do. I think you guys do that. You've got like the brass dome that looks really cool. Starforge looks really cool. Voidforge looks really cool. Calm's roots look really cool. The the Phoenix shield looks really cool. But there's a lot of them that don't really look that good, man. Like, yeah, I think they should add in. It would be really cool if they added in cosmetic armor sets that you could get from killing certain bosses. I would love that. Death's Oath. Oh, I don't even remember what that looks like.
But I mean, I think that's we do try anyway, of course, but at the same time, like that's
Tabula
the thing that
rasa.
You have to worry about.
Yeah.
I think a lot of games, like they may go into things where the philosophy is, we can sell this thing and it's not going to be a problem. But then there's this just sort of subtle effect that it has on all your game design where it just infects things and kind of just like it influences how the game is placed. The moment that the moment that monetization touches it, it's kind of like it gets a bit corrupted by it.
Yes, bro. Oh my god.
So that's really it. I don't know if I have any like exact specifics.
Fucking
on specific
obviously.
Games to really call out and shame here, but that's kind of the main thing. So like even when you look at
this is the reason why I think that a lot of people lose interest with live service games too, is they realize that are like, and you know what my favorite thing about this is? It's like the I don't want to get religious here, but it's like God with original sin. Oh yeah, so Jesus had to die for original sin? Why? Why not just get rid of it? So it's like you have this crazy system put together that it's like, yeah, so we have to have the energy system so then you can't do too many items. Like, well, why do you have this system to begin with? Like, well, we need to have autoplay so you can do these activities that take a long time. Well, why do you have the activities in the first fucking place? If this is all autoplay gameplay, what the fuck? Why are they even here? And so that's my favorite part of it is when like a developer, they've created this world that, well, it has to be shitty. No, this is just the way it is. No, it doesn't. Get rid of the whole thing. A good example is, this isn't a microtransaction, depleting keys in Mythic Plus. Why? No reason. Yep. It's create problems to sell the solution. Yep. Isn't Stash the same thing? Yeah, but it's a free game, so fuck you, buy the tabs. You want to play the game seriously? Put $60 into the game, the same as you would for any other fucking game. Spend the amount of money that you would spend on Diablo 4 for stash tabs, and you're going to have more fun than you would with Diablo 4. Shut the fuck up. It's going to be fine. It's not a big deal.
Like, because I guess I'm like this, I'll just talk about PoE and the fact that we sell stash tabs. So the original reason why...
Here's the reason why I'm fucking angry. It's because people act like stash tabs are the same as being able to buy 5-star pulls in a gacha game. It's not the same fucking thing.
Like, that's fine, is because if we didn't sell stash tabs, what people would do is create more free accounts, because you can just create as many accounts as you want in a free-to-play game. You could just effectively create more accounts and have more stash anyway in a more inconvenient manner. So then we're like, okay,
I did this in Diablo 3.
Do this anyway, so therefore
you guys probably did in Diablo 2
selling
too.
Of that isn't going to be an issue, and it isn't for the most part an issue, I think. But at the same time, you'll see a game designer and they'll say something like, "Oh, like it's fine if this thing doesn't stack too bad. It'll just, they'll just put it in the stash and that'll sell more stash tabs." And I'm like, no, we need to really, like, even just that is immediately making a thing. Like, someone is saying this because of the business model. They should never be doing that. Like, we want
exactly, and this is the problem. It's that when a store is introduced into a game, the game now becomes revolving. The game now revolves around the store. If you look at Lost Ark, any gacha game, any game that has like an in-game store, the moment that the store comes in there, it immediately has the critical mass that makes everything else revolve around it. That's what's bad. BDO, I don't know enough about BDO.
Keep the game designers away from that thinking as much as possible. And
by the way, people say we need to protect this guy. I guarantee you that Jonathan is great, but the guys at From Software, a lot of the guys at Capcom, the guys at Larian, there are a lot of studios out there that think the exact same way. Like, just because we have, like these AAA professional dick eater companies like EA out there, doesn't mean that there aren't people that are making good games that have nothing to do with that.
Anytime I see that, I'm kind of like, no, we really have to not fall down into that hole. But even just for something as simple as what we do have, that's already like, I've heard people say something like that, and I'm like, no, we can't do this. Yeah. We have to make sure that we're not. So yeah, as I said, it's a very easy hole to fall into, and we try as much as possible never to fall into that. And the best way we can do that is by not introducing any pay-to-win elements as much as we can.
Why is Path of Exile stood the test of time? It's more popular than ever right now.
Because it's good. It's pretty simple. It's good. So, like, if you look at a lot of the games that are popular, they're good. You look at a lot of the games that aren't popular, they're bad. There it is.
Been pretty much consistently increasing in player base since we did our league model, so 3-month cycle and so on. But I think ultimately the important reason is because we do those 5 things, and very few games do.
Valorant's a good game.
On very few titles that actually do all of that right, and then actually follow up by having the seasonal releases. Other games that don't, like, for example, so Last Epoch doesn't have random areas, at least not like in the way that Path of Exile does. Yeah. And I think that if they don't do something about that, that could be something that is going to hurt them, because I think that kind of thing will...
He's right. And I think that Last Epoch knows that. So, like, the developers from Last Epoch are actually really smart, and they care about their game a lot. I'm sure they're going to add that. Like, Last Epoch, obviously, I mean, if you remember, like, PoE's been in development for 10 years. So, yeah, of course it's going to happen.
Be to their detriment in the long run. And, like, once again, it's just one of those things that, like, when we were looking at... Like,
Last Epoch's so good. It's a really good game.
Founding of our studio, like, when we founded our studio, we're like, these are the 5 things you need to have a long-lasting game. And if you look at Diablo 2, which also had all of these things, Diablo 2... which, of course, we, were very highly influenced by when we started our studio.
Totally fucking copied Diablo 2. I remember looking at PoE 1. I remember, dude, I probably told this story 50 times. I came home from my dad's house, and I watched my favorite streamer, Kriparian, playing a game, talking to some bald guy named Chris Wilson, like, oh, what, like the soccer ball from Castaway? Who is this guy? And he was in a cave in Act 2 fighting bears. And I was watching him play it, and I thought he was playing Diablo 2. I need to, so I don't know if I did say this, I think once or twice. I recorded a review of Path of Exile while it was in closed beta in like 2012. And I never released it. I need to eventually put it out. Yeah, I will. Let's watch. I know. I need to watch it one day. Release it for PoE 2 official launch. Maybe I will. Yeah, show it. I've got to find it somewhere. But yeah, I thought it was Diablo 2. Obviously, they took a lot from Diablo 2, but that's fine. Yeah, I don't give a shit. If it's better, then that's it.
Is also one of the longest lasting games. Like, that game was being sold in stores. Obviously, this is back when people actually went into stores and bought games.
For 10 years.
This was still being sold in stores like 10 years after
exactly.
it came out. There was like
like the Diablo 2 box, like collector's edition, like where it had like Diablo 2 and like the Lord of Destruction. How many of you guys have like the vivid picture of your mind of going to Circuit City, Best Buy, or Walmart and seeing it?
Other game I can think of that
everybody
has that
had it.
Long-term run in retail,
except me.
It's absolutely crazy. So it really shows you that those 5 pillars really do get you a long-lasting game.
Yeah.
How much Path of Exile versus Path of Exile 2 have you been playing?
So at this point, I have to admit, I don't play much Path of Exile 1. I actually find it very hard to go back to because the combat is just so much worse than PoE 2 from my experience that like I just can't really do it anymore. But PoE 2 I play every night. You have to, right? Like every night I spend my evening playing the game. My son, thankfully, really enjoys watching me do it. It's just because like I need to see the kind of changes, and because every time you play a boss, every time you play the thing, you just learn a little bit more and a little bit more, and you just have to keep on iterating on it. So yeah, I pretty much have to play constantly. But I mean, I enjoy it, right? Like it is fun to do, and it's especially great seeing all of the art and everything that gets added, and like all the new things that come in. Like it's actually great. And, like every time I see a new thing, I'm like, oh yeah, that's so cool. Like those little elements. So that's really fun. But I have to admit, I don't play PoE 1 anymore. And the person who does is Mark, and he is therefore much more involved in Path of Exile 1. But at this point, as I said, it's hard to go back to.
What's a non-ARPG that you've played and really liked?
I mean, other than Balatro?
Say Elden Ring.
Okay, what was the most recent thing? Oh, so the most recent one I was playing was Prince of Persia, that new Prince of Persia game that came out. Can't remember.
Great game. Really good game. I'm so sad that they closed the studio that made The Lost Crown. That's the one he's thinking about.
The subtitle of it. The other Lost Crown, yeah. So that one's pretty interesting to me. I think that there's a lot of really interesting combat design in that game, and I was paying attention to it quite a lot. Even though, as I said, totally different genre, but I think that there's a lot to learn from these kinds of action games and looking at some of the sequences and some of the ways things combine and so on. That game's obviously got a lot of like aerial type hitting stuff, which is not applicable to us at all, but it's very interesting to look at something like that. And also when you look at the bosses in a game like that, it's there's just sort of interesting inspiration you can take. So that's probably the most recent one that I played that I was really kind of like thought was really good. But it is honestly hard to find AAA games these days that have the
Yeah, it sure is.
The kind of good qualities that I'm looking for in a game. So that was a nice one.
A huge thank you to Jonathan Rogers and everybody at Grinding Gear Games for letting us play the game, letting me get a chance to sit down with Jonathan to talk a little bit about Grinding Gear Games and Path of Exile 2. If you want to play Path of Exile, you can get access on December 6th if you are a supporter. If you spend over, I believe it was $480 in the original Path of Exile, you get instant access. And if you pay $30, you can just get into early access. Otherwise, when the game fully launches, it's completely free. So check it out. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, everybody. For more on Path of Exile, check out my most recent preview about the Mercenary, or the one about the Witch, or the one about the Ranger. And for more on all things gaming, keep it right here at IGN.
It was a great video, by the way. This guy asked really good questions, especially at this beginning interview. This was like actually S-tier questions. Like, yeah, I'm going to link you guys a video. This was amazing. WIGN. Well, I already was planning on doing this, but now I'm going to have to do this. I have to get the channel partnered now. To celebrate the launch of Path of Exile 2 in early access, we'll be running 2 weeks of Twitch drops. To support our community streamers, we'll be offering the Chimera Pet for purchasing or gifting 2 Twitch subscriptions of any tier. Fuck. Oh, God. The reason why, actually, here's the real reason why. It's because the bitrate is bad. And this is going to be like a super high definition, high bitrate game. And I don't want it to be like when I played Vampire Survivors. So I'm probably going to fill out the paperwork tonight or tomorrow. And we're getting partnered. I guess I'm going to have to make money. I'm going to have to make probably over $100,000 a month again. It's awful. Very annoying. But also, by the way, so this is another thing that's very funny. You guys don't need to worry about ads because I pretty much always have the sensitive social issues tab on. So how many of you guys got a pre-roll watching my stream? Nope, not me. It's actually crazy. That's wow. It's crazy how that turned out. It's crazy how everything pretty much just turned out being good for me, huh? How about that? Wow.